Today's video is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction. This, as you may recognize, is the Tower of Terror, as is this, and this, and this, all asking the same question. Why? I invite you, if you dare, to come along, because you're watching Soarin to Tower.
Soarin to Tower, we are ready for takeoff.
Tower of Terror is one of the most unique Disney attractions. It's a must-ride for me every time I'm able to. I've ridden the one in Florida, California, both pre- and post-Guardians, and the one in Paris. And each of them is unique, unlike something like Soarin, where each version is the same ride film with a different theme. In fact, it didn't even start with the Twilight Zone. It started in 1989 with Mel Brooks and the concept for a Castle Young Frankenstein drop tower set in a Bavarian village before it became Mel Brooks's Hollywood Horror Hotel. But when Mel Brooks left the project to make the movie Life Stinks, Disney pivoted to a haunted hotel based on the CBS show The Twilight Zone. Imagineers even watched every episode of the show twice to make sure they got the tone right. On the practical side, they met with the people at Otis Elevators. But the team that had spent over 100 years crafting smooth elevator rides didn't really want to make a drop tower. So Disney had to do it themselves. 3 years later, on July 22nd, 1994, the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror officially opened in Hollywood studios. Beckoning visitors down the new Sunset Boulevard area with its nearly 200-foot-tall height, the Mission Inn-inspired exterior was created to blend in with the Morocco Pavilion from the back. As riders approached, they could hear screams from those already plummeting, that were piped in by Disney. And if you looked up as you got closer, you could see the silhouette of a man lurking in the window. The journey begins in the lobby, modeled after that of the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles, and filled with props that Imagineers bought from actual antique stores, like chairs from the Renaissance and statues from 19th century France. As we passed the hotel directory sign, though, we'd see a slightly foreboding warning if we looked close enough. And then we step into the library to hear from the host of the Twilight Zone, Rod Serling. Even though he passed away almost a year before the opening of the ride, Disney used a combination of archival footage of him.
Tonight's story on the Twilight Zone is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction. This, as you may recognize, is a map of the United States,
Along with a voice double to bring his likeness to the ride. After walking through the boiler room and past some rusting equipment, we board a service elevator and experience a thrilling freefall. Well, almost. You actually aren't falling at all. The elevator car you're in is actually attached to a cable that pulls you down towards the ground, faster than a pure gravity-caused freefall. After going up really high and getting pulled down very far, we could find the usually unflattering photo that was taken of us, and we'd see this jar. In a ride as filled with antiques as this, you might think this jar is one too. It's not. It's actually a jar that Imagineers ate sausages out of during construction that they accidentally left behind, and that was glued to the desk by the decorating team. Nice. Even though everyone loved this attraction, Disney still wanted to make it better. So they added a second drop in 1996, a third in 1999, and a fourth, as well as a randomized drop sequence, in 2002. Thus, Tower of Terror as we know it today. But Disney had just opened their California Adventure Park that nobody liked. So Imagineers wondered, maybe California needed its own tower. This one was inspired by the Pueblo Deco style of architecture found in a lot of early 20th century California. On the inside, though, this ride was pretty much the same as its Florida counterpart, with a queue, lobby, pre-show, and boiler room loading area. The biggest difference was during the ride, where they replaced a scene in the beginning when you float through the fifth dimension with a nifty segment where you disappear from a mirror. This meant that the car never left the drop shaft like it did in Florida, and resulted in a shorter ride time overall. But that didn't seem to bother guests because the ride was a huge success. So, the tower came to Paris, in a direct copy of the California version. For now, but we'll come back to that a little later. Until then, Tokyo would get its own version, but it wouldn't be connected to the Twilight Zone. This was for a few reasons. First, Disney doesn't own Tokyo Disney Sea. The Oriental Land Company does. So for Tokyo to get the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, it would have to pay both Disney and CBS, which they didn't want to do, considering that the show had never actually run in Tokyo. Wouldn't be a great investment. That, combined with a different cultural attitude towards the supernatural, and a lack of a Hollywood-themed area, led to the hotel's new identity as the Hotel Hightower, an 1890s hotel in New York City owned by billionaire Joe Rohde. Harrison Hightower. Man, they really do look similar, don't they? Somebody must have really disliked Joe Rohde. In this version, Harrison Hightower stole an ancient artifact and disappeared in the elevator on his way to his private headquarters. Functionally, this was the same as California's version, but with a completely different tone. The layout of the queue is pretty much the same, but with a different architectural style to match the different location and time period. Then, going into the lobby, you pass a set of broken elevator doors, and hear from a tour guide that leads you into the pre-show. Instead of Rod Serling, the story is told through an animated stained glass window. Then, you go through a room of Hightower's stuff, board an elevator, disappear from a window, and go up and down a lot. In 2016, you could ride the California version without lights or music playing in Tower of Terror Late Checkout. But for those who didn't check out, they were forced out, because the entire thing closed in 2017 to become Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. Response to the announcement of this was, having to wait in line for 5 hours for rocket rods was more entertaining than what this garbage will be like.
When Walt said Disneyland will never be completed, I don't think he meant change every classic ride.
Boo! Don't change the best ride ever!
Mixed, but it opened anyway. Much like Tokyo's version, the ride was the same, just with a completely different look and feel. Now you enter the Collector's Fortress, passing cases of Easter eggs to Marvel movies and Disney history. Then you move into the Collector's office, where Rocket gives you the mission: break the Guardians out. The service elevator becomes the gantry lift, where you move up and down past screens with the action and views of the park, all set to the classic Guardians music that I can't play. This also got its own late checkout style overlay called Monsters After Dark. In 2019, the version of the original Tower of Terror in Paris, see, I told you we'd come back, got its own update called A New Dimension of Chills that gave it a brand new story. Well, actually 3 new stories. While in the hotel's elevator, you can either be chased by a malevolent machine that's trying to trap you, frightening creatures that are looking for distressed souls to terrorize, or a sinister poltergeist that wants to take you to the 5th dimension. Weird overlays, but I think they work. I find it very interesting that the same 2 variations on a drop tower can become 7 unique rides that all feel unique from each other. I mean, what about these 3 attractions make it seem like they're the same ride? The Imagineers were able to take the same ride and customize it to create all these experiences. I'm probably partial to the original in Florida because that's the one I get to ride the most, and because I love the old Hollywood Twilight Zone aesthetic, but it baffles me how different Mission Breakout feels, despite being pretty much the same. Guess it just goes to show you the power of terror. Until next time, be sure to gather all your carry-on items from the undersea compartment and exit to your right.